December 24th, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. A home filled with laughter, warmth, and the excitement of Christmas Eve. The Sodder family, George and Jenny, along with their 9 children, had gathered under the glow of a carefully decorated tree, sharing stories and dreams for the future. The smell of pine, mixed with the sweet aroma of cookies baking in the kitchen, a perfect picture of holiday cheer. But by morning, the joy would be replaced by devastation. A fire would consume the Sodder home, leaving behind nothing but ash, debris, and questions. 5 of their children, who had been tucked into bed just hours earlier, would never be seen again. The official story called it an accident, a tragic fire caused by faulty wiring. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into years, the Sodder family began to uncover troubling clues. Clues that didn't just challenge the official story, but unraveled it entirely. A misdialed phone call, a ladder mysteriously moved from its usual place, a series of cryptic warnings ignored in the months leading up to the fire. What really happened on that cold Christmas Eve? Were the Sodder children victims of a terrible tragedy? Or did something far more disturbing take place that night? This is the mystery of the Sodder children, the questions that linger, the evidence that confounds, and the answers that may never come. Fayetteville, West Virginia, 1945, a small, tight-knit community nestled in the Appalachian Hills. The air was crisp, the streets lined with modest homes, and the rhythm of life was simple. It was here that George and Jenny Sodder built their lives after emigrating from Italy. Together, they raised a family of 10 children in a 2-story wooden home just off Route 21. George Sodder was a respected businessman running a trucking company that provided well for his family. Known for his firm opinions and fiery temperament, George often found himself at odds with others, particularly when discussions turned to politics. Jenny, on the other hand, was the grounding force of the family, a nurturing mother who kept the household running smoothly. Their children, ranging from toddlers to teens, were their pride and joy, and Christmas Eve in the Sodder home was always a celebration of love, family, and tradition. But this year, something felt different. For weeks, strange occurrences had unsettled the Sodder household. An insurance salesman had visited, warning George that his house would go up in smoke if he didn't change his political stance. On another occasion, an unfamiliar man had been spotted watching the children from a parked car. George dismissed these incidents as idle threats, brushing them off as the petty grievances of small-town life. As they approached their house, a small town friendlier to rum. On the night of December 24th, however, these seemingly unrelated events would collide, setting the stage for a mystery that has haunted Fayetteville and the Sodder family for generations. Christmas Eve began like any other in the Sodder household. The younger children hung their stockings by the fireplace while their older siblings entertained them with stories. As the night wore on, Jenny and George retired to bed, leaving their 5 youngest children still awake, playing with their new toys. At around 12:30 a.m., Jenny was jolted awake by the sound of the telephone ringing. She rushed downstairs, only to find a strange caller on the other end. A woman whose voice she didn't recognize, laughing and asking for someone who didn't live there. Disturbed but not alarmed, Jenny hung up and returned to bed. But something wasn't right. She noticed that the lights in the house were still on and the curtains open. Unusual, as the last person to bed usually turned everything off. Checking on the children, she found them asleep in their rooms. Jenny turned off the lights, closed the curtains, and climbed back into bed. Just an hour later, she woke again, this time to a loud thud on the roof, followed by a rolling sound. Moments later, the smell of smoke filled the air. She shook George awake, and the couple sprang into action, desperate to save their children. What they didn't know was that this fire was only the beginning of their nightmare. George and Jenny Sodder scrambled out of bed, their hearts pounding as the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. The house was already engulfed in flames, the fire spreading with a speed that seemed unnatural. George yelled for his children, but only 4 emerged from the inferno. Marion, John, George Jr., and Sylvia, the youngest. The 5 younger children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were still inside, their cries muffled by the roaring blaze. George sprang into action, desperate to save his children. He smashed a window with his bare hands, slicing his arm, but when he tried to enter the house, the searing heat and thick smoke drove him back. He called out for the children again, but there was no response. Frantically, George turned to his truck, intending to use it to climb to the second-floor window. But as if by some cruel twist of fate, both of his trucks, despite having worked perfectly the day before, refused to start. Jenny ran to a neighbor's house to call the fire department, but the operator didn't answer. Another neighbor attempted to call from a nearby tavern, only to find the phone line inexplicably dead. Time was slipping away, and the flames consumed the house as George and Jenny stood helpless, their screams drowned out by the roaring fire. The fire burned for 45 minutes before reducing the Sodder home to ash and rubble. By the time the fire department arrived, nearly 7 hours later, due to a series of unexplained delays, there was little left to save. The charred remains of the house offered no sign of the 5 missing children. The fire chief concluded that the blaze had been caused by faulty wiring, but George wasn't convinced. The Sodders began piecing together troubling details that cast doubt on the official explanation. Why had the trucks suddenly failed? Why were the phone lines cut? And why were no remains found, even though fire experts assured George that bones would have survived the blaze? Theories began to emerge. Witnesses reported seeing strange figures near the house on the night of the fire. Others claimed to have spotted the children alive. One woman said she saw them being driven away in a car, while another claimed to have served them breakfast at a roadside diner. "I wasn't there," sources said. The Sodders even received a cryptic letter years later, containing a photograph of a young man and a note that read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Illit boys, Anine 0132 or 35. The man in the photo bore an uncanny resemblance to their missing son Louis, fueling their belief that the children had been abducted. But who could have taken them, and why? Decades have passed since the fire that forever changed the Sodder family. Theories abound. Some believe the children perished in the flames, while others insist they were kidnapped as part of a sinister plot. Despite exhaustive searches, private investigators, and public appeals, the truth remains elusive. For George and Jenny Sodder, the mystery of what happened to their children became their life's obsession. Until their final days, they held out hope that one day they would find answers. Today, the billboard they erected in their children's memory still stands on Route 16, a haunting reminder of one of America's most perplexing, unsolved mysteries. What really happened to the Sodder children that fateful Christmas Eve? The answer may lie buried in the ashes, or perhaps hidden in plain sight. The mystery of the Sodder children is one that has captivated generations, and we've only scratched the surface. What do you think happened on that fateful Christmas Eve? Share your theories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this story as chilling and thought-provoking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends who love unraveling mysteries. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the world's most puzzling, unsolved cases. Together, let's keep the search for answers alive.